Hi there. In this lecture we go over Game 6 of the 1960 World Championship match. Mikhail Botvinnik with the white pieces against Mikhail Tal. We see c4, knight f6 from Tal. Botvinnik plays knight f3, g6, g3. A very solid, fun-killing system for King's Indian players to see. The fianchetto variation. Bishop g7, bishop g2. Tal castles d4, d6. Knight c3, knight bd7. We see Botvinnik castling e5, e4, c6, h3, and now queen b6. We have d5, c takes d5, c takes d5, knight c5. Some pressure on the e4 pawn. We see knight e1, and now bishop d7, knight d3. That knight is taken, queen takes d3, rook fc8, and it looks as though, hold on, this rook, it can't be used for f5 later, right? Can it? Not necessarily. This is a bit of a plan disguise, if there's such a thing. Later, it is technically possible to move this f-pawn after the knight moves somewhere, to exert pressure on the e4 pawn, and maybe the rook can return back. So it looks as though Black's interested in queenside play, though. That's the indicator. This is a bit of an art of war, kind of disguising one's intentions, not giving away too much information. An art of war philosophy going on here. Rook b1 is played. If bishop e3, it is possible for Black to play queen takes b2. For example, this situation should be about equal after knight takes b5. Rook takes c1, bishop takes c1. Black does have a shot here in the form of knight takes e4. And this gives rise to bishop takes e4, queen e1 check, queen takes c1, and it should be about equal. But rook b1 was played, protecting that pawn officially. We see now knight h5, bishop e3, queen b4, queen e2, and now rook c4, as though Black's really interested in queenside pressure. Rook fc1, rook ac8, king h2, and now things reveal themselves. Tal actually plays on both sides of the board with the move f5. So a very interesting move, ramping up the pressure. We see e takes f5, bishop takes f5, and the rook's hit on b1. So a very interesting situation. Rook a1, and now here the audience was fairly well behaved up till this point, but Tal electrified the audience. People started going in a very excited manner, started talking too loudly, discussing things too loudly. The whole place erupted like a kind of football match after this next move. I wonder if you can guess for 500 points what this next move is. So the audience became extremely noisy after this next move. That's my clue to you. And in fact, the rest of the game, had to be played, had to be actually moved eventually to a quiet room, just to board the clock and pieces and players, but not the spectators, just a quiet room away from the spectators because of the noise and excitement built up from this next move. So I'm going to show you this next move now. And it's a very liberational type move, by the way, as in liberating the pieces. Knight f4. This bishop potentially is going to be like hugely liberated by this piece sacrifice. Just to contrast this, before we get into that, if knight f6, the piece activity for Black wouldn't be so much. The bishops are more contained, behaved like the spectators. The bishops are more behaved after such a move like knight f6. And White should be able to get some degree of positional control with even the move g4. And you can see that White has a certain amount of positional control here. Black's being kind of tamed, especially this bishop. The potential to set the opponent problems is less because the bishops are contained. The piece activity is a bit less. And say the rook moved to c7, king g1. Okay, black might be able to put some pressure using this c-file with knight e4, and we might get a situation a bit like this, but it seems overall quite stable compared to the game continuation. There's nothing too much for the spectators to start, raving about. So, this position should be in white's favour overall with careful play. In fact, white might be able to play a move like queen a5 at some point here. This is just purely fictional now. Let me just continue this. And just to give you the nature of things, bishop f6, a4, and say rook a3. This is purely fictional. Black could try something like this, and white still could be in control even if black tries to get at the king. That's purely fictional, a bit far from the game. The main point I wanted to show though is that this move contrasts greatly, hugely. The nature of the position is much more chaotic after what is played. So knight f4. Such is the case, it gets people's excitement going in the spectators, and it's very, very noisy after this. We see g takes f4, e takes f4. So this liberates this bishop. These bishops are on full power. We see bishop d2. So already perhaps a slight inaccuracy here with bishop d2. If a3, queen b3, the bishop did have, it seems, the option of bishop takes a7. For example, with bishop e5, f3, b6, white has a4, and even though this bishop is looking as though it's going to be trapped, it's actually rather difficult. It's a difficult thing after knight a2. This is another hugely fictional situation, but it seems as though white ends up being much better here. So this is a very, very dangerous idea, it seems, a3. If queen a5, bishop d2, bishop e5, king g1, white is doing well there. If we have a look at this again for a moment, if rook a8, just to show what the problem is, it's too much resource distraction. There's knight b5, which hits the c4 rook, as well as protecting the bishop. If rook takes, what is going on here? White's, after knight d4, can even afford to give up that bishop. It's hitting the queen. We're hitting the queen here. This is big trouble for black, this position. So yes, it's a very interesting situation where a3 seems to be a key move, but yeah, this is just very, very clinical play. If we look at this again, if bishop takes f4, by the way, has been played from this position, bishop takes f4 on move 23, just rook takes f4, and this is delightful for black. The bishop centralized like this on full power. Very, very great bishops. If bishop takes a7 is played immediately, by the way, then queen a5, and if bishop f1, bishop e5, and we can see that actually after rook c7, this is very careful play, because again there's a resource like knight b5. If queen takes, there's a resource knight b5, which is annoying. This is only just an even position. It's dynamically balanced, but if black's very, very careful, then this bishop is kind of trappable. After bishop takes c3 especially, then this is nice for black, this position. Not queen takes a7 immediately, because the knight b5, and that's not so nice. White's with the advantage there. So, but with very, very careful play, yeah, bishop takes a7 is refutable immediately if it's played immediately. But okay, so there's a lot of things to calculate. You can appreciate there's a lot of things to calculate here with bishop takes a7. But bishop d2 was played, and we see now Tal playing queen takes b2. It turns out here bishop e5 is not a bad move, central principled move, threatening things like f3 check. And what does white play? f3, then the queen takes b2 here is interesting. This situation with queen takes a1, bishop takes a1 is actually rather nice for black, getting the two rooks there. Bishop's kind of central. But okay, queen takes b2 was played, rook a b1. And now, what was Tal's point, you think, here, for 50 points? What does black play here? Okay, f3. It seems, with the help of modern chess engines, that is, in retrospect, away from the excitement and noise of the venue, that here white does get the advantage with bishop takes f3. So for example, if bishop takes b1, rook takes b1, queen c2, it seems white can play here rook c1, and now depending on where the queen goes, let's say there's two options, queen f5 or queen b2. Let's look at both in turn. If queen f5, white gets the advantage with bishop g4, it seems. After check, queen takes e5, bishop takes e5, check, f4, and if rook takes f4, bishop takes c8, advantage for white. And here, if rook takes c3, then guess what white plays here for advantage, for 50 points. Okay, bishop takes c8, this leaves white a piece up. So in that variation, we saw, what we just had a look at, is queen f5. But also, let's have a look at queen b2. Here, again, bishop g4 is the resource that white should use, it seems. And if rook c7, rook c8 to c7, rook 8 to c7 rather, then queen e8 check is good after bishop e3. That holds f2, and it introduces an attack on the black king here at the expense of the knight. So rook takes c3, there's a big attack here, which is winning. After, say, bishop d4 check, queen takes f8, it's a winning attack. Ouch. So it does seem as though, objectively speaking, in a scientific analysis, which I don't think would be possible in such circumstances of the venue and everyone exploding with excitement with a huge amount of noise, but it seems as though bishop takes f3 objectively is the move. It requires, important calculations that bishop's going to be useful for bishop g4 later and potentially sacrificing the knight. I think both players had probably thought this was going to be a draw here by repetition with rook c1, and here forget bishop g4, just rook b1 with draw. Probably both players felt that was going to be a draw with repetition there. And so instead, in the game, we have Botvinnik choosing rook takes b2. The human side of the game has to factor in the noise of where you're playing. It's like a chess performance. We're not just doing cold analysis when we play in over-the-board chess. Spectators, Tal loves performing. He probably didn't like having the game moved as well to backstage. So it's interesting, because of all the noise. So rook takes b2 seems to be a significant turning point of this game. When it moved 25, bishop takes f3, seems as though offers white very, very interesting prospects. Okay, so let's continue now from rook takes b2. And now f takes e2, and all of a sudden here, well, this is a very dangerous pass pawn indeed. We see rook b3, rook d4, bishop e1, bishop e5 check, king g1, and here, because of the interruption of the game, now around here having to be moved to this backstage room away from the spectators, Tal had to restart all his calculations, it seems, and completely forgot what he had calculated, but thankfully finds a decent enough move anyway. This is a very, very good position for black, but there is actually a very forceful move available here. I wonder if you can find the forceful move for 200 points, as well as Tal's move, for 200 points. So the forceful move about to reveal is to do with the passed pawn here. There are resources related to this passed pawn. Okay, rook takes c3. Bishop f4 was played, but actually rook takes c3 undermines the d1 square, and this is actually quite crushing rook d1. For example, if rook c7, bishop f4, and there's a big problem. Where is this rook going? It's an overload. This situation we just take here, and this is just much better for black, this situation. Then let's look at that again. So rook takes c3. That is the best that white can possibly do. If bishop takes c3, this is rook d1 check, and rook takes c1. So yes, interesting situation here after rook d1. So, but in the game, bishop f4 is also, a pretty strong move. We have knight takes e2, rook takes c1, knight takes d4, rook takes e1 check, bishop f1, and now the central move, bishop e4, hitting d5. So it seems that white's centre has collapsed. White's pawns are fragmented into 4 different pawn islands. Black's bishops are beautiful here. We see knight e2, bishop e5. There are ways and means here. This is a very strong position for black. Black could have also been more forceful, it seems, with bishop h2 check and taking on f1. This is a good position. For example, here, black can get this position where nothing is dropping off in terms of the pieces, and this is just better for black. Also, bishop takes d5 immediately is possible, hitting the rook. Going to this endgame is also favourable for black. The passed pawn potential is a bit too much for the knight and bishop, it seems. Overall, this is great for black. There's 2 extra pawns there for black. But bishop e5 seems very, very sensible. f4, bishop f6, rook takes b7. If ever king f2, that king can be evicted back with bishop h4 check and taking. So there's no point. So rook takes b7, bishop takes d5, rook c7, bishop takes a2, rook takes a7, bishop c4, rook a8 check, king f7, rook a7 check, king e6, rook a3. So black's in the driving seat here with this extra central pawn, which needs to be pushed, it seems, and it is pushed. So d5, this passed pawn coming down the board, check, puts the king back, king d6. The black king, by contrast, is able to improve position. Now after knight g3, this is taken. Bishop takes c4, d takes, king takes. This rook and pawn ending is still winning for black. After c3, rook c7, king d4, rook d7 check. This is the end of the game. Mikhail Botvinnik resigned with this check. If king c4, then check. We can see that black is making progress here, getting the king there, for example, and here, for example, rook e3 check, king d2, building a bridge for that c-pawn will be absolutely winning. It's fairly clear cut after that we can queen this pawn and any check, there's rook e3. So yes, a very, very exciting game indeed. Key takeaway points for me, if there's like 5 key takeaway points, if we aim for 5 or less, in fact, let's be flexible. Well, one key takeaway point, this knight f4 at move 21 is startling. It creates a lot of complexity, which even Mikhail Botvinnik cannot navigate. It's a liberational move. So it liberates the bishops. We see if the knight had gone to f6, it would have been calmer waters. Here there's a lot of calculations needed. So much so that Botvinnik perhaps was getting confused and losing a lot of time on the clock. So yes, takeaway point 1, complexity generation. Takeaway point 2, bishop containment. As part of that complexity, creating huge activity for the bishops. So in the game we have huge activity for the bishops, they're glorious. There's also takeaway point 3, there's some fragmentation already evidenced underlying pawn structure fragmentation to be borne in mind here. So ramping up the pressure on both sides of the board. The bishop's absolutely look glorious controlling key squares. Takeaway point 4 here though, yeah, subtle tempo gaining moves need to be in detail investigated. So a3 apparently, I mean this is basically like a computer continuation to make bishop takes a7 a lot more effective. Yeah, it's a computer continuation essentially, that this is so effective. Yeah, for things like rook a3, it's very, very difficult to calculate this kind of stuff. Or the bishop escaping. So, yeah, I think in the complexity, though, of the game, the main line of the game, the last takeaway point, the dangers of the passed pawn. Passed pawn becomes extremely dangerous here. And this gets back material. The passed pawn is at least worth sacrificing back. So in the driving seat, the central pieces are black, and the fragmented pawn structure kind of tell, as they say, it starts to tell. This fragmented pawn structure, black's bishop pair, create a very, very nice endgame scenario for black to play, and that passed pawn triumphs in the end, as well as black's extra king activity, whilst the white king is put in a box, so to speak. And even if it transitions as it did, it's still winning. So wonderful dynamic game. This game is actually, it seems, a lot more popular in more people's collections than even game 1 of the 1960 match. So it's a game, fundamental takeaway point or philosophy, it's a game of complexity, liberation, setting problems which are very, very difficult to solve. Okay. I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks very much. Hi there. Thanks for getting to the end of the YouTube video. If you would like to see other Mikhail Tal games, I actually have an amazing course for Mikhail Tal, which is currently at 4.9 with over 400 students. You can check this out from the Kingscrusher TV page. So Chess Strategy and Tactics, Mikhail Tal's amazing games. You can check out some free preview videos as well here. If you do expand all sections, you can see the preview links to get some free previews. So I hope you do check out this course index and the free previews. So I really had a thrilling time actually checking out Mikhail Tal's games. So yeah, the YouTube video here you saw was just a sample from this course. I hope you check it out. Okay, thanks so much. Oh, by the way, comments, questions, likes, shares, all appreciated. And if you did get to this part of the video, please do leave some sort of comment like Tal fan. Okay, thanks again.